The story is titled, My Wife Demanded an Open Marriage Because She Needed to Explore Her Spark. I begged her not to. She did it anyway. When I found my own spark with her best friend, she called me a traitor and tried to burn my clothes. The irony was lost on her. I'm currently sitting in a Motel 6, staring at the singed hem of my favorite flannel shirt, trying to figure out how my life turned into a bad Lifetime movie. My name is Mark, 32, male, and up until 6 months ago, I thought I had the kind of marriage people envied. I've been with my wife, Sarah, 31, female, since we were sophomores in college. We were the couple that finished each other's sentences, the ones who survived long distance and broke-ass entry-level jobs together. I'm an architect, steady, detailed, maybe a little boring. Sarah works in PR, loud, chaotic, magnetic. She was the color, I was the canvas. It worked. Or at least I told myself it worked because I loved her so much it physically hurt. The shift started subtly about 8 months ago. She stopped laughing at my jokes. She started guarding her phone like it contained nuclear codes. Then came the talk. It was a Tuesday. I was making tacos, dealing with a rough day at the firm, just wanting to relax. She leaned against the counter, scrolling through Instagram, and dropped the bomb without looking up. Mark, I feel dead inside. I need to explore my spark again. I thought she meant taking a pottery class or maybe a girl's trip to Cabo. Nope. She meant sleeping with other people. Specifically, she mentioned options she wanted to pursue. I froze. I begged her not to do this. I told her it would break us, that I wasn't wired for sharing the person I loved. She rolled her eyes and called me insecure. She said, It's just sex, Mark. Don't be so medieval. I need to feel desired by someone who doesn't know what I look like when I have the flu. I need mystery. The only person who seemed to get how insane this was? Elena, 31, female, Sarah's best friend since freshman year. Elena has been in our lives for a decade. She's the opposite of Sarah, grounded, kind, absolutely zero drama. I remember Elena sitting on our couch a week later while Sarah ranted about my controlling nature, aka not wanting my wife to sleep with strangers. Elena looked at me with this mix of pity and horror that made my stomach drop. She told Sarah, You're playing with fire, Sarah. You can't just open a marriage unilaterally. Sarah just laughed, poured herself another glass of wine, and said, Fire is the point, Elle. I'm suffocating here. I should have packed my bags right then, but I was weak. I stayed, hoping it was just a midlife crisis phase she'd snap out of. I didn't realize she had already lit the match. The first 2 weeks of our open arrangement felt like living in a house with a gas leak, invisible, suffocating, and waiting for a spark to blow the whole thing sky high. Sarah didn't just dip her toe in. She did a cannonball. She downloaded Tinder, Hinge, and Bumble right in front of me, swiping while we watched Netflix like she was shopping for shoes. Every notification chime felt like a physical slap. She went on her first date on a Thursday. I remember because Thursday used to be our pizza night. Instead of ordering from our usual spot, she spent 2 hours in the bathroom. She came out wearing a red dress I'd bought her for our anniversary 3 years ago, a dress she hadn't worn for me in ages. She spun around in the living room, the fabric swooshing around her legs, and asked, Do I look sparky? I felt nauseous. Sarah, please, you don't have to go. I can fix this here. She sighed, the light in her eyes dying instantly. God, Mark, don't be such a buzzkill. I'm doing this for us. If I'm happy, I'll be a better wife. Just find a hobby or something. She left in an Uber, smelling like vanilla and excitement. I sat on the couch in the dark, staring at the wall, feeling completely emasculated. About an hour later, my phone buzzed. It was Elena. Hey, I saw Sarah's story. She's out? Elena texted. Yeah, date night, but not with me, I replied. 20 minutes later, Elena was at my door with a 6-pack of beer and a greasy box of pepperoni pizza. She didn't say, I told you so. She didn't pity me. She just sat on the floor with me, and we ate in silence for a while. It was the first time in months I didn't feel like I was invisible. She's an idiot, Mark, Elena said quietly, cracking open a beer. You know that, right? She's chasing a high that doesn't exist. I love her, Elle. I don't know how to stop loving her, I admitted, my voice cracking. Elena looked at me, really looked at me, with a sadness that mirrored my own. Just don't lose yourself trying to keep her. You're worth more than being someone's safety net. When Sarah came home at 2 a.m., she was glowing. Disheveled hair, smeared lipstick, humming some pop song. She didn't even check if I was awake. She just crashed into bed smelling like someone else's cologne and cheap gin. I lay there listening to her breathe, realizing that the woman sleeping next to me was a stranger. And for the first time, I wondered if Elena was right. Maybe I wasn't fighting for my marriage anymore. Maybe I was just waiting for the funeral. Update 1. Okay, reading the comments is a lot. Most of you are telling me to run. Trust me, I get it. But when you've built a decade of life with someone, it's hard to just walk out the door immediately. I'm seeing a lawyer next week just to know my options, though. To answer a few questions? No. Sarah hasn't asked if I'm seeing anyone. She assumes I'm sitting at home pining for her, which, sadly, I was doing until recently. And about Elena, she's not making a move. She's just being a decent human being, which is a low bar that my wife is currently tripping over. Things got worse yesterday. Sarah told me she's planning a weekend camping trip with a guy named Blaze. Yes, really. She asked to borrow my sleeping bag. My sleeping bag. I told her no, and she threw a fit. Actually threw a ceramic coaster at the wall, screaming that I was being petty and resisting her growth. She ended up storming out to stay at her mom's for the night. The silence in the house is deafening, but honestly, it's kind of peaceful. I think I'm done begging. If she wants to burn it down, maybe I should stop holding the hose. Sarah came back from her spiritual weekend with Blaze on Sunday evening. She dumped her dirty laundry, including my sleeping bag, which now smelled like weed and failure, on the living room floor and launched into a monologue about how the trip unlocked her chakra. Apparently, Blaze is a DJ who lives in a van by choice. She looked at me sitting there paying the mortgage on the house she treats like a hotel and said, "You seem so heavy, Mark. You need to let go." I let go, all right. I grabbed my keys and walked out. I ended up at O'Leary's, a dive bar Elena and I used to drag Sarah to, back in college before she decided she was too good for domestic beer. I texted Elena. "She's back. I can't be there." Elena showed up 20 minutes later. She didn't look pitying this time. She looked angry on my behalf. We sat in a booth, shoulders touching, and for the first time, I didn't pull away. We started talking, not about Sarah, but about us. About the architecture project I was excited about that Sarah called boring. About Elena's promotion that Sarah hadn't even congratulated her on. "I don't get it," Elena said, tracing the rim of her glass. "You're the catch, Mark. She's treating you like an accessory she's bored with." "I'm boring," I said, repeating Sarah's mantra. Elena turned to me, her knee pressing against mine under the table. "You're stable. You're loyal. You're kind. That's not boring. That's everything." The air in the booth changed. It wasn't the frantic, desperate energy Sarah had been chasing with Blaze. It was warm. It was steady. It was electric. I looked at Elena, really looked at her, and realized she was the one who had been color-correcting my life while Sarah was just splashing paint around. We didn't sleep together that night, but when she walked me to my car, she hugged me. It lingered. Her hands were on my back, grounding me, and I felt a jolt go straight to my chest. That was the spark. Not a new position or a stranger in a tent. It was being seen. I went home feeling guilty and exhilarated. Sarah was awake, waiting in the kitchen with a glass of wine. She looked at me with narrow eyes. "Where were you?" "Out," I said, feeling a new backbone forming. "Finding my spark." She laughed, a cruel, sharp sound. "Please, you wouldn't know a spark if it set you on fire." The irony. She had no idea she was standing in a room full of gasoline. Wednesday night. That was the tipping point. Sarah left around 7 p.m. for a tantric breathing workshop with some guy named Orion. She made a point of kissing me on the cheek before she left. A pity kiss, like you'd give a sick relative. "Don't wait up," she chirped. "I might crash at Orion's yurt." I didn't wait up. I called Elena. She came over with a bottle of whiskey and a look in her eyes that said she was done pretending. We didn't even make it to the couch. We collided in the hallway. It wasn't like it was with Sarah, frantic, performing, trying to prove something. With Elena, it was desperate in a different way. It was two people who had been starving for affection finally being fed. It wasn't just sex, it was a reclamation. For the first time in 8 months, I didn't feel like a placeholder. I felt like the main character in my own life. We were in bed, tangled in the sheets, breathless and laughing about something stupid, when the front door slammed downstairs. It was barely midnight. Orion's yurt must have lacked amenities. Elena froze, her eyes going wide. Is that? Yep, I said, my heart hammering. But strangely, I wasn't scared. I was ready. Sarah stomped up the stairs, throwing the door open. She stopped dead. There we were, her boring husband and her loyal best friend, clearly having found the spark she claimed I was incapable of. The silence lasted 3 seconds. Then the screaming started. You are kidding me, Sarah shrieked, dropping her yoga mat. Her face went from shock to a shade of purple I'd never seen. Elena? Seriously? My best friend? You are a traitor. Elena sat up, pulling the sheet around her, calm as ice. You wanted an open marriage, Sarah. You said Mark needed to explore. He explored. I meant with a stranger, you skank, not with my person. Sarah lunged, not at Elena, but at me. She started clawing at the sheets, screaming about betrayal and boundaries, the same boundaries she'd torched months ago. Get out, I shouted, standing up and putting myself between them. You opened the door, Sarah. You don't get to be mad about who walked in. She stared at me, her chest heaving, realizing she couldn't bully me into submission anymore. Her eyes darted around the room, landing on my open closet. A manic, terrifying grin spread across her face. You think you can humiliate me in my own bed? She hissed. I'll show you a spark. She sprinted into the closet, grabbing armfuls of my clothes. Suits, flannels, the vintage band tees I'd collected for years. She ran to the window, threw it open, and hurled them onto the front lawn. Then she ran out of the room. I heard her thundering down the stairs, screaming, "Burn it all down!" I looked at Elena. Did she just... She's going for the lighter fluid, Elena said, scrambling to get dressed. She keeps it under the sink for the fire pit. Update 2. I thought the police escorting Sarah off our lawn would be the wake-up call she needed. Instead, it was just the opening bell for round 2. Being a PR rep, Sarah knows exactly how to weaponize a narrative, and by Thursday morning, she had spun a web so thick I could barely breathe. She didn't just stick to TikTok. She went for the jugular, my career. I walked into my firm at 8:30 a.m. and was immediately summoned to the senior partner's office. My boss, David, looked uncomfortable as he slid a printed email across his mahogany desk. It was from Sarah's professional account. In it, she detailed my supposed drug-fueled rages and claimed I was using company funds to finance my mistress. I felt the blood drain from my face. David, you know me. I drink Earl Grey tea and draft blueprints. I don't even take ibuprofen unless I have to. I know, Mark, David said, rubbing his temples. But this was sent to the entire board. It's a liability. You need to handle your domestic situation immediately, or we're going to have a very different conversation. I walked out of that office shaking with a kind of cold, calculated rage I didn't know I possessed. She was trying to starve me out. But the real target wasn't me. It was Elena. Sarah showed up at Elena's apartment complex around noon while Elena was at work. She didn't have a key, so she improvised. Using her charm, she convinced a maintenance guy she was Elena's sister and had a medical emergency. Once inside, she didn't just steal things, she desecrated them. I got the call from Elena around 3 p.m. She was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. I rushed over. The apartment looked like a crime scene. Sarah had taken scissors to every photo of the three of us from the last 10 years. She had poured bleach, gallons of it, all over Elena's wardrobe. The fumes were overpowering. But the kicker? She had spray-painted "Spark This" in bright red lipstick across Elena's bathroom mirror. We called the cops again. This time, it wasn't a noise complaint, it was burglary and vandalism. But Sarah wasn't done. While we were giving our statements to the officers, my phone rang. It was Sarah. Did you see my art project? She asked, her voice eerily calm, almost childlike. I'm just expressing myself, Mark, like you wanted me to. You're going to jail, Sarah, I said, my voice dead flat. I'm going to the press, she countered, laughing. I have a meeting with a local blogger in an hour. I'm going to tell them how my husband and best friend gaslit me into a mental breakdown. You want a war? I'm the nuke. She hung up. I looked at Elena, standing amidst her ruined clothes, holding a bleach-stained blouse. She wasn't crying anymore. She looked terrifying. She wants a war? Elena whispered, dropping the ruined fabric. Fine, let's give her one she can't spin. We didn't sleep that night. We fueled ourselves on adrenaline and the cold, leftover pizza from the night my marriage died. Elena was a woman possessed. She knew Sarah's playbook better than anyone because she'd helped write it back when they were inseparable. Sarah thinks she controls the narrative because she's louder, Elena said, sifting through screenshots of Sarah's unhinged texts. She forgot that PR is about receipts, and we have them all. We compiled what we called the Spark file. It was damning. It had the time-stamped texts where Sarah demanded the open marriage, mocking my hesitation. It had the photos of Elena's destroyed apartment. It had the police report number for the attempted arson on my front lawn. But the smoking gun was the email Sarah had sent to my boss. In her arrogance, or maybe just her blind rage, Sarah had sent that defamatory email from her work account. She had used her firm's letterhead to accuse me of drug abuse and embezzlement to a board of directors. In the corporate world, that's not just messy, it's a firing offense. It's a liability nightmare. She tried to kill your career, Elena said, her finger hovering over the send button on my laptop. She violated every ethics code in her contract. She wants to be famous? Let's make her famous. At 9 a.m. Friday, just as Sarah was supposedly meeting with that local lifestyle blogger to tell her truth, we hit send. We didn't send it to a blog. We sent a formal legal notice, attached with the police reports and her original email, to the managing partners of her PR firm. The subject line was, "Formal complaint regarding harassment and misuse of company resources by Sarah, last name." Then we went public. I posted the police report photos of the burnt clothes and the bleached apartment on my own social media, which I hadn't used in years, tagging Sarah. Caption: "You wanted a spark. Here's the ashes." It took less than an hour for the fallout to hit. I was sitting in my kitchen with Elena when my phone rang. It was Sarah. I put it on speaker. She wasn't screaming this time. She sounded like she was hyperventilating. Mark, what did you do?" "I explored my options," I said, my voice steady. "Just like you wanted." "My boss just called me into his office," she choked out, the background noise suggesting she was pacing in a hallway. "They're suspending me pending an investigation. Mark, they have the police report. They know about the arson charge. You have to retract it. Tell them it was a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Elena spoke up, her voice dripping with ice. "You spray-painted my mirror with bleach, Sarah. You tried to ruin Mark's livelihood. The only misunderstanding was thinking you could burn us without getting scorched yourself." "Elena?" Sarah's voice cracked, a mix of shock and pure venom. "You're with him? Right now?" "Always," Elena said. "And guess what? We're just getting started." We hung up. 10 minutes later, Sarah's blogger friend posted a tweet. "Yikes, just saw the receipts on the Sarah drama. Withdrawing my interview. Abuse isn't a vibe." Sarah's narrative was collapsing in real time, but I knew her. When a narcissist loses control, they don't surrender. They detonate. I looked at Elena, who was pale but resolute. "She's coming here," I said. "She has nothing left to lose." "Let her come," Elena said, grabbing my hand. We changed the locks. She arrived with the sirens. I don't know who called them. Maybe the neighbors again, or maybe she did in some twisted attempt to flip the script one last time. But by the time Sarah pulled into the driveway, a cruiser was already idling at the curb. She stumbled out of her car, looking less like a high-powered PR executive and more like a cornered animal. She didn't scream this time. She wept. It was a performance, loud and theatric, aimed squarely at the officers. "He locked me out," she wailed, pointing a shaking finger at the house. "That's my house. He has my best friend in there. They're stealing my life." I stepped onto the porch, Elena right behind me. We had the protective order paperwork in hand, printed and ready. The officer looked from Sarah's hysterics to our calm silence. It wasn't a hard choice. When they told Sarah she had to leave or be arrested for trespassing and violating the emergency order we'd filed an hour ago, she finally snapped. The mask of the grieving wife slipped, revealing the arsonist underneath. "I am the victim," she shrieked, trying to push past the officer toward the porch steps. "I just wanted to feel alive. I just wanted a spark. You two are boring, miserable traitors." "You got your spark," I said, my voice cutting through the humid night air. I didn't yell. I didn't need to. "You burned everything to the ground, Sarah. My clothes, Elena's apartment, your career, our marriage. You wanted fire? You're standing in the ashes. Enjoy them." Watching them handcuff her wasn't satisfying in the way I thought it would be. It was just pathetic. She had everything. A husband who adored her, a best friend who would have buried bodies for her, a career, a home. She traded it all for a few nights in a van with a guy named Blaze and a yurt with Orion. That was 3 months ago. The divorce is messy, but my lawyer is a shark, and Sarah's Spark file has left her with zero leverage. She lost her job. Turns out corporate boards don't like executives who commit felonies and slander employees on company letterhead. She's living with her mom, posting vague spiritual quotes about phoenixes rising and villain eras, but her engagement is lower than her credit score. As for me, I'm currently sitting on the balcony of a new apartment. Elena is inside making tacos. It's a boring Tuesday night. There's no drama, there's no adrenaline, there's just peace. Elena walks out, hands me a beer, and kisses the top of my head. Tacos are ready. You good? I look at her, really look at her, and feel that warmth spread through my chest again. It's steady. It's real. Yeah, I say, taking her hand. I think I finally found the right kind of fire.